Okay, so we have some major revelations right now because according to what I just discovered, I really researched the heck out of this because I was interested in what you guys were saying, and as I was watching the episode, many of the questions are pretty much, is this real? Is this the Force Ghost of Anakin? Is this a manifestation of Anakin in Ahsoka's mind? There's a whole lot to say in between, but we're definitely going to get to the bottom of this because there's a couple of revelations I want to go through this video, starting with, of course, a specific concept art that seems to have taken place, and then Dave Filoni again seemingly has sneakingly retconned the Force Ghost of Anakin. You see, one of the most fascinating parts in Anakin and returning to Ahsoka was getting that shot after the Siege of Mandalore where he kicks Ahsoka into the world between worlds again, and as he is approaching Ahsoka with his red blade, he shifts between Vader and Anakin back and forth. Of course, this was a thrilling, great visual trick, and we have actually seen this before with Palpatine during the Rebels series where he tries to trick Ezra into actually opening the gate to the world between worlds with his dead parents. When Ezra destroys the temple, only then does Palpatine reveal his true nature, and his hologram flicks between that. So we kind of see the deception here. What does this actually mean? And remember, not only visually, we also have Vader's voice also intermingled with Anakin's voice when he says, "You lack conviction."
You lack conviction.
This, of course, was a direct reference to the Obi-Wan series and the Rebel series too, where Vader speaks half and half.
Then you will die.
But amidst all those Easter eggs and references, I believe that there is something much deeper here that we need to actually excavate. I worked tirelessly to actually get a comprehensive idea of what Dave Filoni is doing with Anakin's character. How will he proceed? Because it's apparent that Hayden Christensen is here to stay, and I would love for that to be true, of course. I would love to see him beyond the Ahsoka series, maybe something more in the future, but this actual scene, him switching between Vader and Anakin, does have some deep connotations. So let's immediately start talking about the first clue, and that is this abandoned concept art from way back in the day, even before The Force Awakens released. This is something we almost saw in live action almost a decade ago before Ahsoka. You see, concept art for Star Wars The Force Awakens by Ian McCaig showed a hybrid Anakin and Vader Force Ghost. This Force Ghost is clearly part man, part machine, part light, part dark, his face covered by a hood and reflective of the character's dark, twisted legacy. The yin and the yang are visibly apparent. Back in the day, this image was much more haunting than the depiction we see in Ahsoka. It is brief, but I think that Dave Filoni definitely took inspiration from this concept art that was scrapped for The Force Awakens. And what's interesting, how this concept art and this scene with Vader shifting connects, is that both Kylo Ren and Ahsoka have deep connections to Anakin. Ahsoka, of course, has her former master appear to her and teach her a lesson, while Kylo Ren in The Force Awakens, we see him that he is inspired by Vader's helmet, the burned helmet that he held in his quarters. So both of these instances have kind of the same message, a Force Ghost or some other kind of manifestation of Anakin that's split between the light side and the dark side. Both of them, of course, even in the concept art, are being portrayed by Hayden Christensen. There's even more evidence that Dave Filoni was inspired by McCaig's concept art, because in the art of Star Wars The Force Awakens, McCaig described the idea of that particular dark Anakin concept art by saying when you light a candle, you also cast a shadow, meaning that both are necessary and both could not exist without one another. It's particularly fitting in this case because Anakin and Vader represent two sides of the same coin. Very few, like Anakin, have experienced such extremes in both light and dark sides. So the idea of both of his Force Ghosts appearing in this concept art is visually represented then in the Ahsoka series, an episode directed by Dave Filoni himself. When Anakin was redeemed, it was a case of him returning to the light side, but that was always within him. Would work both ways. We would see the Vader version and the Anakin version, the redeemed version. So both the dark and the light are true, meaning that Anakin's Force Ghost now has to take a new approach. This doesn't hold true with the idea of what we saw in Return of the Jedi, because Anakin's Force Ghost was pretty apparently light side when we saw it end of Return of the Jedi, when Luke is gazing upon both his masters, Obi-Wan and Yoda's Force Ghost, and his father's. There was no conflict there. So now officially we have kind of a retcon here, seeing that these Force Ghosts or Force Figmentations, whatever you want to call what Ahsoka saw, are not just one-dimensional. They literally can represent whatever version of themselves they want to. Obviously, this time around with Ahsoka, Anakin wanted to teach her a lesson, and in order to do so, in order for her to let go of her past, he needed to also show himself in his dark version too, even going as far as changing his voice and appearing as Darth Vader in his fully dark armor. Let's get to the main question of the day, which is, after the episode, everybody is wondering, is Anakin in this episode, in episode 5, a Force Ghost inside the world between worlds, or is he just a vision inside Ahsoka's head? Well, here's some clues that Anakin told Ahsoka. So Anakin clearly recalls his fight with Luke in Return of the Jedi. When Ahsoka says, "I will not fight you," he tells Ahsoka, "I've heard that before." This is the moment Anakin is referring to.
I will not fight you, Father.
If this was a figment of Ahsoka's imagination, then why would Anakin respond this way? Because Ahsoka was nowhere near that fight. Clearly, if this was an imagination, then Ahsoka would not know this information. At the same time, it's plausible that Ahsoka knows about the fight of Luke because we see them interacting in the Book of Boba Fett. Ahsoka actually helped Luke construct a new Jedi Order, or at least start it up. So part of that conversation might come into play as well. Let's just say Anakin is real and was a Force Ghost. So we have more retcons because Anakin does not appear with a blue glow around him. Again, this might be another retcon, perhaps by Dave Filoni. There are two possibilities here, of course. When Force Ghosts appear in the real material world, then they need this blue hue in order for themselves to be separated from the real world, from the physical world that you can touch. But when these Force Ghosts like Anakin appear inside the world between worlds, then this might not be the case. He does not need that blue hue around him. Then if things weren't crazy enough, buckle up my guys, because Anakin might not be done yet. There are 3 more episodes of Ahsoka left, and as we see, she has already traveled to this other galaxy called Peridia, which practically means these last 3 episodes will probably take place there. However, there's more Anakin dialogue that we've heard from the trailers, and we did not hear it in episode 5. If Dave Filoni wanted to test us, if Lucasfilm actually wanted to test the audience, then I have to say that there's a lot more appetite for Hayden Christensen. Me, myself, I just went bonkers, and Hayden completely stole episode 5 from every other aspect. He was so dominant in this episode. He hadn't missed a step. He came back dueling his heart out. It's as if Nick Gillard was still training him during Revenge of the Sith. Those stunt moves were not just for Ahsoka. They are leftovers from what he did in the prequels. Naturally, we would want Anakin back again talking to Ahsoka, because she's gonna face a real hurdle this time around. And with the retcon of his Force Ghost, anything might be possible. You see, Dave Filoni and Lucasfilm in general are testing these new areas of Star Wars that were never actually seen or heard of before. For crying out loud, they're going to a completely new galaxy, something that we didn't think it was possible in Star Wars, and now it is. So it goes perfectly in line with what we saw from Anakin's Force Ghost. Anakin and Vader's hybrid Force Ghost does make sense for this part of Lucasfilm, for this part of the canon. But it kind of seems to me that Dave Filoni is moving away from George Lucas's original vision. I mean, George never discussed that Force Ghosts could appear in multiple hybrid ways. They could show their dark side, they could show their light side, and I know with Dave, retcons aren't exactly uncommon. They frequently happen. Just ask me, a Star Wars comics nerd. Much of what's happened in the comics has sometime or another been retconned, but it seems like Dave has been left to his own devices to create a new version of Star Wars canon. Let's experiment more freely. Let's see Where does this journey take us, and what Dave Filoni has for us in store? Leave all your thoughts down below.